Welcome back, my little horrorlings. Are you ready for some more scary stories to give you nightmares? Well, gather round, 'cause Mama's got some good ones for you today. I wanted to share a couple of stories that have been passed down in my family. So first, I'll give some background info. These stories were told to me by my great-grandmother, who is currently 90 years old, and my grandmother and her sister. These events take place many, many years back when my great-grandmother was a teen and when my grandmother and her sister were very young. These stories take place in rural Mexico. My family lived in a ranch back where there were barely any cities, just a couple of houses, meaning no electricity, no communications, roads, or anything like that. So basically, in the ranch that my family lived in, they lived right next to a river, and the other houses next to the ranch also backed onto this river since it provided many resources. My grandmother told me that gnomes would come up from the river and closer inland like many other creatures, which was completely uninhabited for hundreds and hundreds of years, which is why these creatures were able to live there. These gnomes were about the size of a small child, and they were mischievous but not evil. In fact, it was known around the village that these gnomes loved children and would always play with them. Over the years, this became normal, and for some reason, people just accepted that they were living alongside and seeing tiny people all of the time. They were different times, I guess. My great-grandmother told me that she played with them when she was a child, and when she grew up and had my grandmother and her sisters, the gnomes were still around. These gnomes would enter the houses at night to play with the children, and one time they entered at night and gave gifts to my grandmother when she was in her crib because she was a newborn. When my great-grandmother woke up and saw the crib, there were multiple stones from the river surrounding it, and some piles of dirt and other things from the river. People from all around the village would have different stories of these gnomes. Sometimes they would get up on horses when someone was riding, and at night you could hear them in your roof. You could sometimes hear them laughing. I don't remember my grandmother telling me if they had names or anything. They just referred to them as duendes. So, like gnomes, little people, or goblins. When I asked what happened to them and where they are now, she told me that after some years and after the world started to change, they just stopped appearing to them. Now I will tell you the story that I was told, and then I will describe and talk about this thing. So basically, a relative of my grandmother that also lived near the ranch was walking next to the river at dawn because he was going to go and fish. As he was walking down the river, he sees a woman in the distance on the other side of the river. He described her as a beautiful woman with a perfect body and a white dress with long black hair, but he could only see the back of her. As he got closer, he thought that it was someone he knew, so he started shouting out to say hello and calling out her name, but she wasn't responding. As he got closer and closer, she finally turned round, and when she did, he saw that her face was actually a human skull. He screamed and was so scared that he fainted. He was later found unconscious and taken to hospital. He was treated for many weeks and he had a fever and was always scared. This guy screamed and was so scared that he fainted. He was later found unconscious and taken to hospital and treated. For many weeks after, he had a fever and he was always scared. This thing had broken this man by just looking at him. As the years passed, more and more people had experiences with these women, or as my family called them, the tepas. Some other people that lived around the ranch sometimes saw them walking upstream, sometimes in pairs, so the people believed that they also lived more inland like the gnomes. These are just some of the stories that I've been told, and if I'm being honest, I don't know if I believe them or not. I've personally never experienced or met any of these creatures, but I find it odd that other cultures around the world describe these creatures the exact same way, even though they did not have ways to communicate what they were seeing all around the world all those years ago. Also, when my great-grandmother and grandmother told me these stories, I could tell from their eyes and the way they spoke that they were not lying. They fully believed that they had seen these creatures and that these creatures were once, in fact, real. Thank you for listening, my little horrorlings. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of tonight's stories. Give this video a thumbs up and hit the notification bell to find out first about new videos. And whatever you do, don't forget to check for monsters underneath your bed. Sweet dreams.